Dan Robertson joins us now, voice of the Jets on TSN. 11-1, Dan. What a start to the season. What a great weekend. How are you?
I'm great. How you doing?
Listen, spirits are high around here right now. We've got this week is going to be so much fun. I mean, just looking ahead to these big divisional games in the Central, and then Saturday with the Dallas game going into the Bomber game. It's a good time to be a Winnipeg sports fan right now, and certainly a fun one to be on the weekend. I mean, two resounding wins by the Winnipeg Jets, one on the road, and then the game yesterday. So much to dive into after that big win yesterday afternoon against the Lightning.
Yeah, it was. It's fun to watch them play, and it's fun to see them win in different ways, right? It's you get down a couple of goals, and you think, well, no problem, no sweat. They're going to come back. That's just the kind of way things have gone so far this season. And I mean, yesterday was interesting. Kevin Sawyer said it when they were down 2-0. They were still clearly the better team in the first period. They got ripped off with that call that wasn't goalie interference, and that's not homerism. And I know there's gray area there at times, but there was nothing gray about that. And they obviously get scored on the penalty kill and came back and won. It was good to see a lot of different players get involved. Sandberg and Stanley scored, so offense from different sources. And man, they're putting the puck in the net at quite a rate right now. So it's pretty cool to watch.
Well, I mean, what do you have? 19 goals in the last three games. There's a lot that's going into the net, and everyone seems to have a piece of it right now. I mean, was it 7 different goal scorers yesterday?
Yeah.
You mentioned, the first period, and I mean, obviously, I was in the building. There wasn't a lot of people that thought that call was going to come back the way that it did. And then, of course, the coaching staff has to challenge that. It doesn't go their way, and boom, a power play goal goes in. It's 2-0. But the resolve of this team, just to continue doing what they're doing. Nikolai Ehlers said it afterwards in speaking with the media that, it shows that we've learned something for these last couple of years. And just really impressive against a really good team like Tampa to be able to kind of shake that thing off, get right back into it, and eventually get the job done in another 2 points.
And it shows that they really believe in themselves, not to sound corny, but there is a level of confidence that kind of permeates through the lineup. So you're down 2-0, and people say, when is it a good time to panic, or is it time to panic? There never is a good time to panic. These guys just obviously believe in what they're doing. So believe in the process. And I kind of hate that term too, but it is true. You can just see them kind of grind away and do what they do. And I think their depth is a lot for other teams to handle. Kevin and I, we were joking that we kind of beat it to death the last couple of games, but even that fourth line that's not scoring 5-on-5, it doesn't matter. They spent a lot of time in the opposition zone yesterday. So they're a handful in their own way. We know the Lowry line is. How do you defend Scheifele's line right now? And with Ehlers, driving that second line, it's tough to take. So if you're the other team and you've got to deal with that, it's going to wear you down. So, and I do think it bears repeating, because we all did on the power play last year, which was 18.8%. Now it's in the 40s somewhere, and it's not going to be that way all year. But to be able to count on a power play goal once a game, pretty much, it's a big change too. And I think you need confidence for a good power play. So that's the word that keeps coming back is confident when I'm looking at these Jets right now.
Listen, 11-1 through a dozen games, hard to imagine a better start. I don't think anyone thought that this was coming. But to your point, I can't give enough credit to the coaching staff. Dan,
yeah,
we talked so much about special teams and how that was an Achilles heel of the organization or the club last year. Rick Bowness came on our program and said they'd probably win the President's Trophy if their power play is sort of middle of the road. And I can't say I disagree with how close it was. For them to have put the amount of work right from the get-go in training camp and in practice to the power play, obviously the PK, a big part of it as well, and to see the results help this team to the record that they are, it's been a heck of a start for the players, but I think also for Scott Arniel and his new assistants.
Yeah, for sure. And Davis Payne runs that power play, and credit to him. It's nice to see, not to go back and look at the way it was the last couple of years, but just it's a creative bunch of players, and every team has creative players, but utilizing Ehlers in the way they do in that first power play unit. And I said it a bunch of times during the broadcasts this year. He didn't score a power play goal last year because he wasn't on the first unit. So now he's in the bumper position. He's on both sides. He's using his strengths. And I mean, you've got Morrissey from the point pounding it. And it's funny, it's almost an afterthought that he's over a point a game, where in any other season, that would be the sort of the lead story. But they have so many weapons right now. And it's cool, too, that when the second unit gets out there without a lot of time, they've produced. I mean, Neil Pionk's putting the puck in the net. He's got a couple of power play goals. And it's not just the power play, Huss, but overall the motion that they have. And I said to Kevin, we were flying home the other day, and I said, I don't know much about basketball, but it's almost like, they're weaving and they're attacking and moving the ball around and moving the puck around, and it makes it tough to defend. So you see that at both 5-5 and on the power play. And I think the systems play to the Jets' skills overall. So it's working out really well right now.
Just as far as yesterday's game goes and the turnaround, I mean, when you're down 2-0, that game can go a couple of different ways. And we mentioned how, they continued to play their game and they stayed in it. I think they felt that they were right in it, but it often takes a play to really spark that turnaround. And I got to tell you, that pass by Josh Morrissey to Vladimir Metsnikov for that wide open net, after Johansson had made some great saves in the first period. I mean, I think he was sort of feeling it, and the Jets, but it just speaks to Josh. It really has turned into a star caliber player. And listen, it's been an amazing start for Neil Pionk. That's another conversation with the bounce back that he's had. There wasn't much to bounce back from. Josh has been brilliant the last couple of years, but a play like that, there's few guys that are able to do that. And to me, he turned that game around with one brilliant play and then a nice finish from Vlad.
Yeah, and there's so much to like about Josh's game. I mean, you can I think if you didn't even know anything about hockey, which maybe people say about you and I a lot, I don't know. if you just went to a game and you're watching this guy's footwork and his skating, you'd say, okay, this is a good player. And then if you look at his defensive work, which I think is underrated, the way he's able to break up plays, it comes from up here, right? He's so smart. He can anticipate and knows how to use a stick. And so that's part of the package, that vision that he has to kind of maybe see players that others wouldn't. And I mean, you look at turning points. Nemesnikov, he had a chance in the slot, and his stick was grabbed, or his arms were grabbed, and there was no penalty. And you're thinking, what's happening? And then back the other way, who was a Glendening, got smoked by Stanley, and then Stanley fights Girgensons, and so that was kind of a turning point too, I thought. But yeah, just to go back to Morrissey, you don't want to become. You don't want to take him for granted, right? Because, I mean, how many poor games does that guy have? I can't remember the last few years. Obviously, everybody makes a mistake here and there, but I don't think he's had 2 weak games back to back. So he's just a mainstay. So important to what they do offensively and defensively.
Well, I mean, listen, he's certainly the leader of the blue line. We're seeing contributions from everyone. I think Colin Miller's had a great start to the season. And, we got to give some laudits to Logan Stanley for the game he had yesterday. And that, to me, was the game that the coaching staff wants to see him. His path to being a regular in the National Hockey League is doing what he did yesterday and adding some of that physicality in it. I'm not sure if you caught Scott Arniel talking afterwards, but, it was quite clear that sort of a momentum-changing hit, getting the power play, scoring on it, another way a big guy can contribute. And, listen, he's had up and down games so far, but seems to be pretty comfortable in the lineup. And to me, that was one of his most impactful games of the season.
It was. And it's, if you look at it, the last couple of the seasons, didn't play that many games. And I know he has his detractors, and I know he's not perfect, but, and we've talked about this too, with Dylan moving on, they need a physical presence on that blue line. I think a key to doing, what Stanley did yesterday, or repeating it, is not running out of position to try and steamroll somebody. But when the hit is there, the big hit is there, then do it. It's something you don't see that much in the game anymore anyway. But I think a big part of his makeup has to be that he's hard to play against. And I'm not sure that's in his nature. Not to say that he can't get down and dirty, but he's, seems to be a pretty laid back guy. So maybe it's tougher for him to get up that way, to get that sort of a focus where he has to be a guy who plays with snarl. But it's I hope they give him a lot of runway, and I'm sure they will. I know some people are saying get Fleury back in there or whatever. They're 11-1. It's tough to complain about anything, but I think that's part of it, that Stanley needs a lot of games to play, because he started the season with injury, as we know, and that's been an issue for him the last couple of years. And look, when he scored that goal, I don't know if you saw his reaction, but it was almost like he was just so pumped, and I think maybe shook off some frustration with that goal, which was nice to see him score yesterday.
Yeah, it was a big one, and he was I'm sure getting a lot of love in the dressing room from the fellas last night. One other guy I want to point out, you kind of mentioned the fourth line on what they're doing. We don't talk a lot about Alex Iafallo, but man, listen, PK, power play, scoring that big goal yesterday, and part of a line that, to your point, Dan, has spent more than their fair share of time cycling it around in the other team's end. I think he's a perfect example of sort of the selfless nature at times that this team is coming to the office with. And man, I mean, as I said, he's not a guy that we spend a lot of time talking about, and he's not a guy that people are emailing about and sending text in. But when you break it down, I mean, Kapari's had a real nice start. Obviously, you've got a guy like Vlad that can move up and down, but Alex Iafallo, a really versatile player for this team that is making an impact in a number of different ways.
Yeah, he is. I was talking with Morgan Barron in St. Louis about the line, and he said, if you look at Alex, he said he's sort of like Vlad. He didn't say that, but he said how he can move up and down the lineup and play different roles. And he's a quiet guy that's really well liked on the team. What I like, when I found they were at their best yesterday in the last couple of games, it's just they're winning the races for the loose pucks. And, not that they're going to steamroll you. I mean, Morgan can be physical. Kupari uses his legs, which he should. He's so quick. And Iafallo just he's got a nose for the puck to break up plays or to break up breakouts from the other team. And they've found their niche, right? They found their role. I think it was in Detroit. Arneal was asked about when might you try and work maybe a Gustafsson in, or Coghlan, who hasn't played yet, or Fleury. And he said, well, I have a plan. But I mean, I even said it yesterday. If you want to get Gustafsson in, how do you do it? I mean, not that there's going to be a big drop off. Maybe he plays left wing for Barron. And I know that's not a huge story right now, what I'm getting at, but just the point is that everybody's clicking. But I think when you have an identity like that fourth line does, it makes it fun to play. I think it's almost like they push each other to kind of pin the other team in their own end, and they'll get chances and they'll get their goals out of that. But that's not their primary concern. It's to kind of keep the other team jammed in their own zone as long as they can.
Well, I mean, the entire team seems to have an identity right now, and it goes right up to that top line. And listen, Kyle Connor has been at superstar levels for the first dozen games of the season. But for all the incredible goals that he scored this year, and I mean, God, that assist that he set up on Friday night was absolute highlight reel stuff. Maybe the most impactful or important play that I think signifies where he's at right now was the play that he made yesterday on the PK when Josh Morrissey's stick, I think it was a PK, when his stick broke. And I mean, Kyle Connor got on his horse and skated all the way back to prevent what was a clear-cut breakaway. And there seems to be, more so than in the past, I think, a real commitment to every aspect of doing things that can help your team win hockey games. And I mean, Kyle Connor, as I say, perfect timing, knowing he's got 1 year left on his deal, but he's helping his team win games in more ways than just being one of the best goal scorers in the league.
Yeah, and if you go back to that assist on Velarde's goal that kept the point streak going in Columbus, I didn't notice until I saw another highlight yesterday. It was a saucer pass on the backhand. I thought he just slid it out to him, but after those great moves, he just flipped it over the defender's stick enough to get it to Velarde. But to your point, and I think it was Hagel maybe who had that breakaway yesterday. It doesn't matter, but I could sort of see him out of the corner of my eye, and Hagel got the shot away, or whoever it was, but it was sort of interfered with because he put his head down and just flew back and helped break it up. I asked Arneal the other night, because after the Detroit game, he said, we're up 6-2, and here's Kyle flying back on the back check to break up plays. And so he noted that. And then I asked him for the next game in Columbus, I said, is that new for Kyle? He right away said, no. He said he's always been hungry to go and get the puck back. Maybe at times in his own end, his defensive play hasn't been great, People get on that. I don't care. There's a lot of guys who can play great defense. There's not a lot of guys who can do what he's doing. And I know this might sound silly, but just to watch that line right now, I talked about creativity earlier. They're having fun, right? I mean, you saw them in Columbus and in Detroit too. There was keep away at times. There's, really artistic plays, for lack of a better term, but still driving to the net. And it's a neat combination of skill sets when you break down those three guys. And Velarde's coming along too. And we talked power play. He doesn't have a power play goal yet, so there's still room to go there. But that's Kyle's driving the bus right now. It's a blast to watch it.
I mean, yeah, just to see that level of defensive effort for a guy that's doing so much offensively. I mean, it's a great statement to make to the rest of the entire team. And it seems like this team does have an identity right now, and it's helping them win a lot of hockey games. Just one quick thing on the Columbus game before we get to kind of this upcoming week. That was as dominant a performance by a Jets club as I can remember in a long, long time. I mean, Dan, that third period, the waves and waves of it felt like they were a boxer trying to finish their opponent. And, obviously they ended up getting a couple more and basically putting it out of reach, much like they did against Detroit in the third period. They seem to know when they're in control of games and look to finish them. And it kind of brings up what's a very intriguing week. And I think starting with yesterday's game, because I think we all realized looking at the schedule moving into November that they were moving up a bit of a weight class, and there's some pretty heavy hitters coming on the schedule. And I think that's what made the way that they played yesterday, coming back from 2-0 deficit, so impressive, because I think there were some people that said, okay, great, well, let's see what you can do when you play some of the better teams in the league. They passed this one test, and I mean, now we got 3 huge games in the division coming up at home this week, which I know a lot of people, not just here in Winnipeg, but around the league, are going to be paying attention to.
Yeah, and I'm one of those people. I mean, when the schedule came out, you looked at it, you thought, okay, this team didn't make the playoffs last year. There's quite a run of teams, the Chicagos and Minnesotas. You thought, the Jets should win those games. I never thought they'd go 11-1. Obviously, no one has, but it's November is a challenge. I know it's 14 games in 29 days, and they have the 3 here against Utah, Colorado, and Dallas, and then hit the road. It's the Rangers. That's a little bit tough trip. Rangers, Panthers, and Tampa again, and then come back from one against the Panthers, and then go on this ungodly road trip that starts in Pittsburgh, and then there's Nashville and Minnesota, LA, Vegas, Dallas. It's really something. So that's, to me, that's a huge test to see where they're going to be at the end of it, not just because of the quality of teams they're playing, but for the time that they're going to be on the road. And both of those road trips are going to be difficult, but so far so good. And to go back again to that the performance in Columbus had come in kind of overachieving a little bit. I think they were 5-4-1, and defensively they'd been all right. And we know they've had such tragedy to deal with and injuries on top of that, but you're looking at them thinking, okay, maybe there'll be a challenge here, but they were thoroughly outclassed. And to me, that's a sign of a really good hockey team too, is to, maybe rise to those challenges, to go into somebody else's barn and put your best foot forward. And that was really something to watch on Friday in Columbus.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this Utah club. I mean, they obviously made some pretty big moves in the offseason. They're not going to be that same old Coyotes team, and they've had a pretty good start. But I think what people are really interested in is getting another look at the Avalanche and, of course, the Dallas Stars. And the Stars will just be back from Finland. I believe they play one game in Chicago before, or maybe it's at home before coming here. But, Dan, that Thursday game against the Avs is going to be intriguing. They have been so streaky. I mean, they had that terrible start, 0-4. They got it together, won 5 in a row. They've now lost 3 straight games by the score of 5-2. One at home to the Blackhawks, one at home to the Lightning, and then in their last outing in Nashville against the Predators. It's sort of a depleted team, but they still have that star power that Jet fans more than any know can flip a game in one single play.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you've got Makar and McKinnon up your sleeve, and that's always a difference maker. And it's not an excuse. I mean, they've been ripped apart by injuries. Some names you're looking at the roster and thinking, I've never heard of this guy before. So these are the little tests all along the way that you like to see, and you kind of circle them on the calendar. And then on the other side, you go back to last spring when that road trip took the Jets to Dallas and to Colorado and maybe Minnesota in between. I remember they pumped the Avalanche 7-0, and we know what happened by the time they met in the playoffs. But it's I'm sure that internally it'll be sort of a thing where the Jets are saying, okay, let's show we're the best team in the Central. We believe we are. And a lot of people coming into the season thought and probably still think that Dallas is ultimately the best team in the division. Maybe they are, but it's, you look for motivation early in the season. I guess it's just such a long season. And we know how well the Jets played in the Central last year. I can't remember their record specifically, but I know it was great. So, and then let's not look past Utah. I think Andre Tourigny is one of the really good coaches in the NHL. Maybe that people, he's not as well known as others coaching where he's coached the last few years. And I'm glad that franchise has kept him on. I know they've gone through some tough times, but he's really good. So they've obviously dealt with some injuries on defense as well, but they're exciting. They move quickly, and there's no easy games. The only thing I think, Huss, is I'm used to saying, okay, say yesterday I could say, here's Tampa with the puck, or here are the Lightning. All I can say is now Utah. I can't say here's the hockey clubs coming over the line. Like, what the hell? What do I do there? I don't know what that's all about.
That is a great question, and I had not thought of it. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll be looking forward to the broadcast tomorrow to see how you manage that uniquely named team for one season before they get an actual moniker. Just speaking.
So is it going to be the Yeti? Is that what we hear? Sorry to cut you off. Is it supposed to be the Yeti? That's the rumor.
I'm not as big a fan of the Yeti. I was kind of hoping they'd go with like Outlaws. There was a couple other cool ones that I thought were in there. I think that the Yeti might wear off after a couple of years, and then it'd be like, really, that's what they named their team? But I don't know. We'll see. That's for them to worry about, and us to follow along. But listen, they're right in the middle of the Central Division right now, 5-4-3. What's interesting, especially with these two losses in Finland for Dallas coming back, it's still a great start at 7-4. The bottom two teams in the division, off-season champs, the Nashville Predators, who have struggled early on, and the Avalanche that we just mentioned, and it's Winnipeg and Minnesota at the top. Minnesota, very quietly, Dan, 8-1-2 on their season so far. A great start for a team that's still dealing with all of those cap penalties from those massive buyouts a few years ago.
Yeah, there's certainly a surprise to me, but I was watching a Wild game the other day. I can't remember. I watch a lot. I can't remember who it was, but I have a new appreciation for Kaprizov all the time. And yesterday we put up a graphic of top 5 players points per game active, and he's in there. He's ahead of Kucherov, obviously behind McDavid, but it's this guy is, and I feel good for Minnesota. Maybe I'll get shot for this, but I love that market. It's a great hockey state. Obviously, it's like another province for me. So over the years, they haven't had a lot of superstar qualities, right? But this guy's a superstar, so he's fun to watch, and obviously they're getting the job done in other ways. I don't know if they can sustain that record where they are, but and it's going to be fun to watch Nashville, and they made the additions, all quality players, but all on the wrong side of 30. I don't know how much Marchessault has left or whatever, but it's not gone the way that they thought it would, obviously. So it's a strong Central, and there's a long way to go, but it's a fascinating division. And like we said, even Utah, I don't know if they'll take a big step forward this year, but there's a lot of quality there too.
Well, Dan, it's been a hell of a start for the hockey club, and it's been a great start for the Jets on TSN, having Sarah back in the fold. And I will remind folks, you're undefeated in the booth this year. The Jets' only loss happened on an Amazon game. So I know you're busy, and most of the games coming up are on TSN, so hopefully both the team and you can continue this hot streak.
I've only ever been called a bad luck omen before, Huss, so I'll take that one. I appreciate it.
Dan, thanks so much for doing this. Great to chat as always, and keep those pipes warm. A busy week for the Jets and the TSN staff coming up. We're looking forward to the game tomorrow and right through the week in the Central Division. Thanks for doing this.
Sounds good, buddy. Anytime.